Jamaica. Despite being an island nation with a population just over 2 million people, it is a place which has had an incredibly influential cultural impact. Whether it be their music, food, chances are you're familiar with something that has come from the island. Jamaica is used to punching above their weight, and sport is no different. Jamaican athletes have won a total of 94 Olympic medals throughout the years, which is the 40th most out of 162 total nations, and more than the likes of heavyweight nations such as Yugoslavia, Argentina, and Mexico. Some athletes include a fella by the name of Usain Bolt, who's the fastest man ever, as well as Elaine Thompson-Herah, who's the fastest woman alive in the 100 meter. Jamaica has an incredibly impressive sporting scene, and it isn't just limited to athletics. There's been some incredibly exciting rumblings going on within the nation's football scene, across both the men and women's sides. We're going to look at the recent successes Jamaica have achieved, the cause as to why, and what this could mean for the future of Jamaican football. First, we're going to speak with the women's national team, because it's hard to ignore what's going on with them. In 2019, Jamaica qualified for the first ever Women's World Cup. They were sent home after the group stage, but it's also worth mentioning that they were drawn to the group of death with Italy, Australia, and Brazil. The Reggae Girls were determined to show that this wasn't a one-off, and they returned to the competition in 2023. In 2019, the top 3 teams met out of the group, but expansion of the tournament in 2023 meant that only the top 2 would advance. Jamaica held heavyweights France to a 0-0 draw in the first game, claiming their first ever point at a Women's World Cup. Their next game was against fellow CONCACAF side Panama, who they saw off by a 1-0 scoreline. They had a fateful meeting with another heavyweight in the form Brazil in the next round, and they were able to hold them to another 0-0 draw. Jamaica were through to the knockout stage of World Cup for the first time ever. They were drawn against Colombia, who they fell to by a scoreline of 1-0 due to a Catalina Uzme strike in the 51st minute. It also wouldn't be right to speak about the Reggae Girls without shedding some light on Bunny Shaw. Not only is the 28-year-old the national team's all-time most capped player, as well as a top scorer, but the Manchester City striker has won 3 Golden Boots in her career, including the last 2 consecutive ones in the Women's Super League. But she's also won the Man City Player of the Season in 2023, the WSL Player of the Season in 2024, the PFA Women's Player of the Year, and the FWA Women's Player of the Year, as well as the Women's Football Award Player of the Year in 2024. Bunny Shaw is not just a star on her Jamaica side, but she's a global footballing superstar. She's raised the standard of football in Jamaica, breaking every ceiling she's faced, and showing that there's absolutely no limit on the future of the Reggae Girls. Although they may not be making World Cup runs just yet, there's plenty of excitement going on with the men's national team as well. The Reggae Boys made their only ever World Cup in 1998 when they didn't make it past the group stage. They've been striving to make it back to football's greatest stage ever since, and they could very well be on the verge of doing so for the upcoming tournament in 2026. Jamaica were drawn to Group E in World Cup qualifying with the likes of Guatemala, the Dominican Republic, Dominica, and the British Virgin Islands. They finished top of the group with a perfect 4 wins out of 4, scoring 6 goals and conceding only 2. Guatemala and the Dominican Republic both showed that they can be competitive sides during this year's Gold Cup, and Jamaica waltzed through the group. They've been drawn to Group B for the 3rd round of qualifying, with the likes of Curacao, Trinidad and Tobago, and Bermuda. Finishing top of the group would ensure a spot in World Cup finals for the first time in nearly 3 decades. They could also reach the World Cup via a playoff if they finish second. The expansion of the World Cup to 48 teams has been seeing many nations qualify for either their first ever World Cup or first World Cup in quite some time. This is a perfect opportunity for Jamaica to capitalize on the current strong squad they have. The new format of the tournament shouldn't diminish from the dominant nature of the Reggae Boys qualifying campaign so far. Although the population of the island itself is roughly the same size as Birmingham, nearly 1 million people in the UK have either moved from Jamaica or are of Jamaican descent. A diaspora of this size can usually disrupt something such as a national football team, but something interesting is happening in the Reggae Boys camp. English-born players such as Ethan Pinnock, Damari Gray, and Mikel Antonio are all choosing to represent Jamaica, and it made a considerable impact for the better on the national team. In fact, 7 of the top 10 most valuable Jamaican players have dual citizenship, 6 being England and 1 being the United States, who also have a strong Jamaican diaspora. Although the English-Jamaican population may be at the forefront of this conversation, there were over 1.2 million people of Jamaican descent living in the United States as the 2022 census. This means that there's nearly as many people of Jamaican heritage living in England in the United States alone than there are people on the island of Jamaica. And players choosing to represent the Reggae Boys is having a snowball effect. The more players that choose Jamaica and perform well for the national team, the more players are going to be inspired to make the same decision, especially when the England and United States national teams are only getting more competitive. and this new generation is starting to have an impact on the national team's performances. Jamaica have taken part in 5 Gold Cups since 2017, and they've finished as runners-up once, semi-finalists twice, and quarter-finalists twice. Compare that to the prior 5 Gold Cups, and they didn't even qualify twice, and only made it past the group stage twice. They also saw a 4th place finish in the CONCACAF Nations League in 2024, as well as being one of the 6 CONCACAF teams invited to the Copa America the same year. 2025 saw the Unity Cup take place, which is a friendly tournament played in London between Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, Nigeria, and Ghana, 4 nations with a large diaspora in the UK. Although Jamaica didn't play their full-strength squad due to the friendly nature of the tournament, they still put up an impressive campaign, including a 3-2 win over Trinidad and Tobago in the semi-finals, and they took Nigeria to penalties in the final, where they eventually fell 5-4. I'm not denying the fact that there's still work to be done. The Reggae Boys were eliminated in the group stage of the Gold Cup last month after a stunning 1-0 defeat to Guatemala and being thrashed by Panama 4-1. But with that being said, you can't ignore the growth going on in Jamaican football on both the men and women's sides of the games. The Reggae Girls are flying the black, green, and gold flag high on the biggest of stages and have a global superstar leading the lines. The men's side are putting in some impressive tournament runs, knocking on the door of a World Cup appearance next year, and are building an incredibly promising side. Football is unpredictable, and there's no way knowing for sure what will be in store for the future of Jamaican football. What I do know is that I'll be keeping tabs on both the Reggae Boys and girls for the foreseeable future, and I have a feeling that I have plenty to be excited about. I may not have a drop of Jamaican blood in me, but you can consider me a fan. It's a magical little thing, this football.